Right, hey guys, and welcome back. Today I have a very non-review-ish video, but I'll still probably be throwing in a lot of reviews. So today's video is mostly gonna be about opinions and ratings of films in general, but I will today be mostly focusing on superhero films, action films, a little bit of horror films, just the general idea of how films are being rated and how I rate some of my films. So once again, learn to take this video with a pinch of salt, learn to discuss and not argue because a lot of people often have problems figuring out the difference in that. Now, I do know that some of you may not really know how to communicate well with those who are having language difficulties and language barriers. But regardless, I believe that understanding the other person is most important, even more so than proving your point. Because at the end of the day, there's no real winner in an argument. Because if you're not willing to understand, then you have already lost. So this is something that's very important that I want you guys to learn because I firstly released a video about how Avengers Endgame was bad. Then I've got a lot of subscribers coming from that. And yes, we have hit 100 subs. So thanks a lot for that. This is not my victory or whatever, it's yours. So I'm not going to take any pride in that. But I'm actually happy that I've got a lot of subs who are people who understand how I rated the films and why I rated them such, which is kind of a gift for me because I've been wanting to do reviews for a long time and I have not really found my place because more than often when I speak to my friends or people who I know about reviews, it often ends up with a disagreement, an argument. And a lot of this comes down to opinions and understanding of a certain concept. So, I mean, of course, there are a lot of things where both sides can be right, or where one side can be actually wrong in certain things. And there's moral virtues, the question of which looks prettier to the other person and all that. Uh, but end of the day, it all comes down to understanding each other. And I feel that that is the most important thing because you will never really know how another person perceives something. They may see the beauty or the disgust in something that you can't even perceive. And I've learned this time and time again throughout my life. And Jesus, Microsoft, sorry. Uh, so yeah, I've learned this time and time again, and I really feel that I wanted to convey this through a video so that you guys can try to see things my way. And even if you don't, it's cool because at least I know I would have tried. So let me just start off by telling you how exactly, I kind of rate this film. So I'm gonna like create a text in the following, screen and then like go through some scenes from different movies and then kind of give you the general idea of how ratings work and all that. So yep, once again, if it's your first time, welcome, 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 and welcome. And without further ado, I'll just flip the screen to a shot from Avengers Age of Ultron. So I know some of you have stayed for my lesser viewed reviews, where I'm more so talking about how I have my own theories about certain films, about the time travel issue that happened in Endgame, and how Age of Ultron is not really the worst Avengers film. It's, I feel, the second best actually, and all that. And a lot of my ratings, which also came in my top 10 superhero videos, superhero films, also kind of surround my idea of rating films. But it's not exactly the same as my favorite. So what I mean is, you may like, to eat a really fatty pizza, right? It's nice to splurge once in a while, and it may taste amazing, yes. But is it a good pizza for you? You get what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you may not get the best in what you see, to be like your favorite, because there could be a difference in that. And that is where my top 10 superhero films are not exactly the same as my top 10 rated films. It's more so my favorite ones, which means that's kind of the oily pizza that I like to eat. But it may not be the best pizza, even in my own opinion, because I know the difference, right? So let me just tell you that the first thing that I look for in all these action, superhero, horror, romance. Yes, I do watch romance. Even anime, I watched anime, and I even watched some Tamil and Hindi films, and all that. But the thing I generally look for is the representation of all the characters in a story, because what tells a story are first and foremost the characters. You can't have a story without characters. Like that's something else altogether. I don't know what you call it, documentary, or something. But a character is represented by an actor, and an actor portrays acting by showing emotion or portrayal of with certain dialogues. Portrayal of emotion with maybe facial expressions, movement, gesture, all of these things. So this is my first, like where I draw the line in terms of what makes a film, which is the characters and the acting of the actors. So this is very, very important for me. And for me, if I get these, uh, these characters or what, I will straight up give it a 1 out of 10. That is a baseline 1 out of 10 from me. That's all I look for. And then after the characters, the second thing, hang on 1 second, let me just keep a tab here. Right, the second thing I look for in a film is the music. And the thing about music is how it impacts a scene. Like, for example, Thor's entrance in Wakanda, where the scene was so well built up together with the chorus of the music that played, that it gave the impact of emotion to that scene, and it gave the character so much weight, added weight, because of how well that scene was taken and processed. And and then we have this very slow pace, like darker scene, music for like BBS and stuff, where it comes more so down to the tone of when exactly the music plays, when it stops playing, and these kinds of things. Like we know for most of the time that in horror films, people will drop the music like just before a jump scare, because it kind of brings you the anticipation of what you're going to hear next, right? So let's say you're always hearing a constant music playing. So now you're used to the feeling of music, and then it picks up, it drops down, all these things. But the moment the music stops, your ears are looking out for some form of sound. This is how a jump scare is created, right? This is the mechanism of a jump scare. Of course, you can also use it for a surprise or anything like that, and whatever. Let me just look for another more suitable scene. I have a lot of BBS shots because that film is a really good example for a lot of things. Yeah, we have the one from the Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Also, the music in this scene is also amazing music. By the way, everything that the cast, took a part in with together with the music were all amazing scenes, and all the music producers and directors did a fantastic job of picking amazing soundtracks to throughout the Lord of the Rings franchise, to be honest. But of course, I took this scene from the Return of the King to show you about the army and stuff. So anyway, back to music. We can also look at I believe a shot from yeah BVS as well, where when Batman goes after the attack um, on in I think it's is it Gotham? Wait, I can't remember. Metropolis, yeah, the attack in Metropolis, and you can also hear a very down, like slow tune, building up the horror and the anticipation that Batman as a human being feels when Superman is basically like fighting Zod, who's like two literal, extremely powerful aliens uh, fighting on in Metropolis. So yeah, all of these things so music is the second most important thing for me, and it automatically makes a film 2 out of 10, right? The third thing is the most obvious thing, the visuals. Now, the visuals of a film is, of course, a very difficult thing to rate in terms of the fact that not every film is very high tech, right? Some films have lower budgets, some films have very little CGI, like the Dark Knight franchise. This is an animation film. Man of Steel, Paranormal Activity. Yeah, this is another good example. No visuals, right? No visuals. It's mostly just wires, I believe, some lighting here and there. And this is Ready Player One. Insane visuals. This is the Prowler like going after Miles Morales in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Another shot from Into the Spider. So every film is very different in terms of visuals. Some are animated, some are very plain, some is all about the lighting. But regardless, what makes a visual really appealing is how you combine the tone together with the style of animation and then show a representation of your idea on the screen. So this scene that you're looking at right now is a shot from Spider-Man 2, one of my most favorite superhero films. I said that it's my most favorite, so it's number one. And but this need not be the best superhero film because it did lack in a lot of other things like logic and stuff. Because he basically punches Doc Ock in the face and Doc Ock is fine, which doesn't make sense because he's super strong and all that. But this was a scene that was even like referenced to be used in the comics because it's such an iconic scene. And the thing about this scene, as you can see, is the tone of it. You can see how the Spider-Man suit comes into focus, the lighting that's being played in the background, this shot of Toby walking away, the music that plays. So all of this comes together in the kind of animation and filmography, the videography of this scene. And then you see something very bland, kind of shot of the Joker walking away from an exploding hospital. But you see the intensity is felt because of the music, the character representation on the screen. There's literally nothing else around. It's just a bunch of cars and the hospital like cracking open with like papers and stuff. And it's not even exploding yet. It's just smoke coming out because the bombs are not really. I think they're not all activating at the same time or something. It's like maybe small explosions, but because of the intensity and the shot, even this is amazing cinematography, amazing filming. Even without any animation involved, this is still wonderful because it gives you a lot of things to see, even in a shot that almost gives you nothing at all, except the Joker, of course, which was the best part of the film actually. So yeah, the filmography, the cinematography, the animation, this thing straight up gets like 2 points from me. And it's a very wide range of things throughout it, right? From 1 point to 2 points. And the reason this thing gets 2 points instead of one is because it's very important. It's a very important element to combine the other elements, the character and the music, which I mentioned. So if the kind of tone and the cinematography fails, then the characters and the music they don't work well enough, right? The effect is not there. So it's 2 points. It's a very important part of the film, which is basically the is what you see on the screen, right? Um, which is another reason why I'm just like I just want to let you guys casually know that for me, I have a thing for blind people where, I kind of really feel bad for them in the fact that they can't appreciate films the way we do because they can't see. And I do donate to the blind, annually. I don't make that much, so I give what I could. But yeah, I feel bad for them as a result of me enjoying all these films because I like a lot of films, and then that's kind of how I started to understand how blind people feel, just not being able to appreciate all this. So they go through a lot of audio representation of films, and I've been reading a lot about that lately. So maybe I'll keep that for another video to kind of explain to you guys how you can appreciate a film even without visuals. The same way you're appreciating this video without actually seeing my face, because I feel that it's the least important thing from what I'm showing right now. So yeah, that's that. Anyway, the next point is the kind of action, right? The logicality of the scenes in certain films. So in this scene, you see this is the Dark Knight Rises, right? You see Batman like taking out a bunch of thugs in order to save um, the young cop. I think he's kind of the Robin in this film. So you see this guy holding a gun on the left, the one I've circled, right? If you watch this scene again, that guy just falls automatically. I'm not kidding. It's like a major fail in this action scene. He'll just fall back. He won't shoot. He won't get hit. Robin is just standing somewhere else, and that guy just falls like all of a sudden. So these are things that you kind of wonder how they missed, right? The action crew, the director, but people still make mistakes. Even in big budget films, even in really, like famous movies like The Dark Knight, a lot of these mistakes can actually be seen if you dig through it. So you it takes a while sometimes, to actually notice these things, but after some time you kind of understand it and you just accept it. You're like, oh, it's fine, they made a mistake. Or you can be picky and say, oh, they made a mistake, it's a bad film. So it depends on to what extent we allow these mistakes to be made. And yeah, it kind of plays a part in the building of the character, the building of the scene, and all that. But some of these may be relevant. Like we know that Batman would have taken out these thugs anyway, so it doesn't matter how many of them he fought. It doesn't matter if they all just fell down when he like threw a flashbang and he took them out in a single like 2 seconds, or whether he fought them for 10 minutes. The same way we can come back to like this scene, the Lord of the Rings one, right? Where we have such a massive army to actually fight, and then you wonder like, end of the day, what's the difference? A small army would have also completed the scene like in Civil War. But at the end of the day, for us as an audience, bigger could mean better. And showing more things on the screen could actually allow people to rewatch it without feeling like they're gonna, not get anything out of it. And one of those really significant films is Ready Player One, a film where there are so many Easter eggs which need not be a part of the film because it was not really a thing that was in the books. And I have not read the books, but I have a lot of friends who read the books who told me that, oh, it's not the same as the book and all that. Yeah, you hear that a lot. I read a lot of Harry Potter books. I read the entire Harry Potter, set of books, and a lot of things that were in the books were clearly not in the film. But still, you can't really look, as the two of them as the same thing. They can be represented in many ways. A lot of things that are in the comics are different from the MCU, and no one bats an eye. So it's something like that. And then of course, wow, I'm getting a lot of notifications. And of course, we are, sorry, Ready Player One. So yeah, a lot of things that are in the film allow you to re-watch the film multiple times, and a lot of this comes down to how big the action sequences are, how dramatic the scene is. Whether you're watching a scene of romance from 500 Days of Summer, whether it's about the Rain Man, whether it's the Fight Club, a lot of the scenes are carried through how many different things they show. how well the action is taken, how many different little ideas they include on this on the screen. And this is another very, very important thing for me, which is the action and the ideas. So for me, this thing literally gets 2 points because it is the most important thing that really determines if a film is rewatchable, if a film is fun, if a film is fast paced. All of this comes down to actions and ideas. And what I mean by actions, just to be very um absolute with you guys, it does not have to be someone punching another guy. That need not be the action. An action could just be someone stealing something or talking over the phone and all that. But whatever the action is, it is the thing that sets the tone of the film. For example, there was one film I remember, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So I told my girlfriend to watch this film, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. I told her that it's an amazing movie. Um, so my then girlfriend, now she's my wife. But yeah, my then girlfriend told me that it's such a boring film because she could not understand the actions of the characters in the film. For her, it was extremely slow and extremely sluggish, and it was not the kind of film that she would watch. And she likes a very high intensity, comedy, a lot of laughter, those kinds of films. And I understand that, like, that's what someone likes, and that could actually change the way they look at the film altogether. But does that mean she was right? Does that mean that comedy and romance films are the best films in the world? No. Once again, it comes down to opinions. So rating films, across the board is not something simple because not everyone can see it that way. And there was also another film I told her to watch. What was that? Oh man, was it a Gary Oldman film? No, no, no. It was the Imitation Game, right? Imitation Game, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, which was also a really good film, by the way. You guys should check it out. And also, she could not watch that film with me. She could not sit down and watch it because of the pacing, the tone of the film, and the action in the film. It was so slow and all that. It was difficult for her. But for me, it was amazing because you understand it. You can slow down your expectations, to match up with the tone. And I gave this example before, right? It's kind of like after you watch like a really fast film or something, reading a book becomes difficult because reading a book requires you to slow down your mind to actually make the effort to read through the letters in the book, to flip the page. It actually turns out to be a task, and it took me a while to actually like get back into reading after watching films. And I realized how difficult it was. And then I kind of understood how what the MCU actually did to the BBS and these amazing superhero films, by the way, because let me just point out some of these scenes, right? Okay, to you, Save Martha, right? It's the same as Bucky is alive scene. It's also the same from, I believe, Civil War. Was it Civil War? Or was it The Winter Soldier? It's also one of those films where the moment they mention about Bucky, Cap is like, oh, Bucky, that kind of thing. And then here everyone's making fun of how much of a genius Zack Snyder actually was for figuring out that these two guys actually had the same mother's names. And no one had used it up to this date. No one had thought about this idea. And this was the actual first film that brought out this idea, which I thought was really impressive. And then they talk about how did Lex Luthor plan anything? They never showed anything, all these, like how exactly did he do it? I mean, this is the same as how in what was it exactly? Let me think. Yeah, Thanos never figured out how the Pym particle works in Endgame. No, but there was another very significant one, right? What was it? So yeah, basically in this film, Lex Luthor kind of figures out that Clark Kent is Superman, and that Bruce Wayne is Batman, and then he actually makes them meet together, and then he builds towards the final scene where he also figures out, I mean, obviously he knows it's Clark Kent, so he kidnaps Martha, then he sets up for it, and a lot of people are questioning like, how do we know this? How does he do it? All these kinds of things are not really um, shown in the film. Yeah, yeah, and now I know where exactly it comes from. The difference was this one, The Dark Knight, where the Joker does a lot of his planning behind the scenes. We don't get to see the Joker's planning. We only get to see what he does as a decision of his planning. And everyone is fine with that. Everyone is fine with never knowing how the Joker makes his plans, but they want to know how Lex Luthor makes his plans. So this is very contradictory. And after rewatching The Dark Knight again, I realized that it actually doesn't deserve such a high rating. It's not that great of a film, to be honest. Because even the fight scenes in the film, like, the last fight scene between the Batman and the Joker, it was really bad. The bank robbery scene at the start, there was no real proper planning, nothing interesting about that scene. It's something you watch in any heist film, to be honest. And even the heist films are like way better because you see them planning and stuff. In this film, you see none of that. So the reason why the Dark Knight was so well rated and so well portrayed was because of the tone of the film. The sheer cinematography of the film carried it. And now when I look back at it, it does not deserve a 10 out of 10 or even a 9 out of 10 rating. I would probably place this at 7 or 8 because it didn't really have a holistic film. The romance of the film was really subpar. Batman's relationship was not really necessary. She was just a damsel, to set up for Harvey Dent's role, which was way more important in the film. And then, also the kind of Joker setting up for the final fight was basically Batman versus two dogs and then a guy. And that's more difficult for him than an entire SWAT squad of soldiers, which was actually a better part of the action. So the final face-off was nothing that great. Um, and we don't really see Batman fighting a lot of villains in the end. He mostly fights off the SWAT squad, which is his own people. So it kind of questions what the Joker really does by himself and how he does all this. And we don't even get to see it. So we don't really get to lean on the villain as well to be a promising character. So there is that. So yeah, it's 2 points for the actions of the characters, the representation of the actions, and all of these things, right? So these are very visual stuff. Uh, the next thing, which is the emotional take. So this one really comes down, like boils down to the acting, right? But it need not necessarily be all about that. The music and the tone, the cinematography is very important as it sets for the acting that you see on the screen. And of course, the character can give his best expressions of, crying or anything like that. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to how the music plays to set for the tone and how the lighting comes into play to kind of give you that really warm or cold feeling of what the character is going through right now. And how whether they are trying to make you laugh, whether they are trying to make you cry, all of these things are really very important as it comes down to the expression. So the expressions really play, of course, not only in terms of horror films, but also in romance films and comedy films, a very, very vital role. So, how exactly do we know the difference, right? How exactly do we see that, oh, Lex Luthor here is acting better than Superman here, or something like that? This is where it really comes down to the human perception. It's very difficult, to be honest. Because what may be ugly for one person may not be ugly for another. What may be pretty for one person or beautiful for one person may not be the same for another. So this is the very subjective thing about a film, which is the characters' expressions, the emotion that's carried in the film, whether it may be a romantic film, whether it may be a sad film, all of those things. But it's really set by the tone of the film, by the music that's playing, by the actions of the characters, and by the actors playing the characters as well. So this is a combination of multiple things, but it is a wonderful thing to see because emotions are a very important part of how a film is carried. If a film is very bland, like it lacks emotion, the character straight up lacks emotion, you need to know why, right? Like, are they acting such? Like, was Brie Larson told to be stoic throughout Captain Marvel? Was the kid in Brightburn told to be emotionless because he was an alien? Okay, if so, they have to be consistently that. I think Brie Larson was consistently that, so we can just keep that aside. But people demanded more expressions from her. But what if that's what the directors told her? What if the directors told her, we want you to look flat throughout the film? And by flat, I'm talking about her emotions. So yeah, and what if they told this guy in Chronicle, the one you're looking at here? Chronicles was an amazing film, by the way. Um, where what if they told him that he has to act like a kid or like a child throughout the film, crying and taunting and arguing, being very emotional and all that? What if that's what they told him to do? So that is his representation. You can't really blame the actors on this one, because at the end of the day, the directors and the entire crew are watching it and they're like, "Yep, okay, we are good with this," that kind of thing. So yeah, so stop blaming Brie Larson whether you like her or not. But of course, if you personally don't like her, that's your personal problem. I'm talking from a filmography perspective. But yeah, anyway, so yeah, there's this, and then yeah, the one from Brightburn. So a lot of people who were like telling me that, oh, you suck because we don't like your reviews. That's once again, that doesn't make sense. Because there are a lot of other people giving all kinds of reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, which don't make sense either for Endgame. We can't tell that they suck because that's the way they saw it. So I can only say that the film sucked because that's what really happened, right? So yeah, there's that. But anyway, that's a very personal thing. I feel that you guys should learn to have some manners on the internet, which is something that I can't be teaching each and every one of you. That's something that you really personally have to understand. So, yep, respect opinions. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyway, back to the emotion. So this scene is another one, emotional one where you finally see like the final battle in the Lord of the Rings, and it's also a very important scene. You see Neo in the Matrix trying to figure out who he is, whether he can actually achieve this power that Morpheus wants him to. And as plain as what's his name, um, Keanu Reeves' face can be in terms of expression, because of the intensity of the scene and because of the supporting cast and because of his very slight expressions of surprise and shock and all that, we still get to appreciate the emotions carried out by the characters in the screen. This is an animation, by the way. This is not even an actor acting it, but we can still feel the emotions coming out of Megamind's face. This is from Megamind, which is another amazing film. Most of the shots that I have here are all fantastic. You guys should watch all of these films, to be honest. So, yeah, we can still appreciate it because of the way the character is drawn, the way the lighting comes in, the way the music plays, the intensity of the scene is felt. So, yep, the emotion of the film is just another very, very important thing. It comes down whether it's a romantic film, whether it's a horror film, emotion gives another point. That's a 7 out of 10, right? Um, and then the next one. Sorry, I just like to take notes whenever I'm saying something. So I just took a note of that. So the next important thing. So this is where it starts to break out from just what you see, right? To what exactly is being shown. Like, okay, I know what is being shown, but why is it, right? What exactly are you trying to say? So, why is it that there's a fire extinguisher sitting here on the right that is not being used to put out the fire on the left, right? So it's things like these that make people question and come up with theories, which is one of the most amazing part of films, right? The theories that come into play. And also you see like this scene where paranormal activity has been happening for several days now, and yet they have not failed to like report this, to like leave the house or something, or to just straight up call some expert or something to deal with it. So why do they do these things? So like maybe we know that, oh, it's expensive to call an expert to deal with paranormal stuff. The priest will like charge a lot maybe, or maybe the church requires a very valid reason to come in. Maybe they can't leave the house because it's expensive. There are so many possibilities, and a lot of this will what happens is they force the fans to kind of come up with their own theories to fill up the plot holes, right? So there's only so much the fans can do, because once we realize, like Endgame, right? Once you realize that your entire film was actually just bad writing, it doesn't matter how the fans fill up your plot holes. It won't be enough to fix the film. Because just like I said, like how in BVS everyone demands that they know how Lex Luthor actually plans all of these things, but we never got that from the Joker in the Dark Knight. Sorry, I'm trying to find where on earth I left that scene. Yeah, we don't really know how the Joker does these things, right? So this is a plot hole, but still, the sorry, the viewers, us, actually are willing to like figure out, like agree to certain terms, agree that it is canon to not show the Joker figuring things out. Um, but we kind of know what he did, right? So this opinion has to be the same throughout all films now. But why isn't it so? Why do we want to see certain bad guys figure things out and some others not so, right? Why do we like to see how the Prowler in Into the Spider-Verse actually does some of his work? Why do we like to see how some of the villains in The Lord of the Rings or in Gladiator have their own scenes? In Gladiator, which is another wonderful film, we get to see how the current king, the one who has killed the previous king, we get to see some of his own like personal life and shots of his own personal life. Why is it necessary, right? Why don't they just leave it? It could be a plot hole and we can just agree to it. So this all comes down to what extent they can give us these things and how much of it makes sense. One very amazing film that I don't have a shot of here was Inception. Inception is a film that does have a lot of plot holes, but the plot holes make sense because of the way they built up for it. Like they made it such that these are plot holes that they are leaving for you to figure out. It's an obvious plot hole that they're saying. We don't want to say whether the end of the story was still in a dream or not in a dream, because we want the audience to like to figure out their own ideas as to whether it is real or not. And they left it such. So a lot of the audience, when they watched it for the first time, they're like, so was he actually in a dream or was he not? But then, people start coming up with their theories and all that, and someone figures out finally that because DiCaprio, I forgot the name of the character, because Leonardo DiCaprio was wearing the wedding ring in the last scene, or was he not? It's something like that. Basically, it says that if he was wearing the wedding ring, it is a dream, and if he was not wearing the wedding ring, it is not a dream. And the reason for this is because his, I think they call it memento, right? His memento or something, is not the top which he spins, but is actually his wedding ring, which is a fantastic theory that the fans came up with. So this was a set up plot hole, which allowed the fans to figure out why exactly it is such. Whereas in Endgame, we had so many plot holes that made no sense whatsoever because there was no build up to it. There was no like set path. There was no like understanding of what the director was up to. And this is where we get detached. So a film without plot holes is inevitable. Like um it's sorry, not is it inevitable? No, a film without plot holes is like kind of unavoidable, right? But it's still something that we hope for, and that's what's going to give you the perfect film. Which I think, to be honest, a lot of romance films, a lot of like rom-coms and stuff, they don't have many plot holes because they don't build up for such big things or big anticipation, and it kind of makes them better films in that sense because you don't question the whys because you just want to see the whats, right? Because you already know the whys because it's very plain, it's very realistic. Whereas in films like Ready Player One, you want to know why certain things happen. You want to know why the characters make these decisions because it's not natural decisions, because you don't naturally live in a world where you are in a computer game. You don't naturally live in a world where all the Spider-Men are real. You don't live in a world where you have super villains to fight or something like that. So we as ordinary people want to know the whys. And this is what makes certain films different from others. So for me, that is another very, very important thing. So I'm going to make that the 8 out of 10. And then the like second half of that point is the ideas. So ideas are something that we saw a lot of in Ready Player One, right? We saw a lot of cool things like in the video game of how he bashes someone, the coins start flying, he grabs the coins and refills the fuel in his car and then continues to drive. So this is actually amazing. Like we never saw this in any other film. So this is a new idea. It was really nice to see. And similarly, into the Spider Verse, we saw the Prowler like coming after Spider. What's his name? Miles Morales, and it's also an amazing scene. We haven't seen something like this before. The intensity of the music together with the animated character, you actually can feel like the horror in this scene, even though it's such like an like a witty and upbeat film for the rest of the part. This scene was straight up like a horror film. Like I would watch a horror animated film if it was just this. So the ideas are a very important thing. This is another film that gave a good idea. This scene was used in comics, like after the movie was taken, because of how iconic it is to see Spider-Man give up his mantle. And then also, where is it? This one is pretty like basic. We know that a speedster can like kind of vibrate his hands and create destruction. So we see Quicksilver do this. So this is a good idea, right? They actually bring in a character who can handle this escape problem. They don't send the Wolverine because it's unrealistic for him to beat or up like 100 guys or something. But the Quicksilver can get in and out easily, so they use him. And then the idea of how the time travel works in Days of Future Past was well executed. I mentioned this before. Unlike the one in Endgame, it had a good idea. So the ideas really play a very important part. The idea that no one thought about Batman and Superman both having the same mother's name. The idea of how Lex Luthor got these two together, something we never got to see planned, but something that was still interesting because it's set up throughout the film. So yeah, ideas are a very important thing. You want to see something new, something fresh, something you have not seen before, something that's difficult, because originality of course is not an easy thing anymore, because we have so many movies, right? We have so many movies and books, and we have seen almost everything, but still there's so much more to see. So it's kind of like that I don't know how the saying goes. It's kind of like what do you know? I think this is something my mom used to say. What you know is as much as what you can keep in your palms, but what you don't know is as much as the ocean. So there's always ample to see and ample to learn. And we want films to keep teaching us new and amazing things. One of the best ideas came from the Star Wars franchise. I'm talking about the early ones like 4, 5, and 6. It was things that people have never seen, and Steven Spielberg actually showed us so many amazing things. And George Lucas like actually had such amazing ideas, and they both teamed up so well to create the Star Wars franchise, which gave us so many ideas of how droids look like, how intergalactic travel looks like, how spaceships look like. Star Trek also showed us amazing things. Interstellar showed us amazing things. So ideas are a very, very important representation of a film. And I know like it sounds like a lot, like it deserves to be a 2 point thing, but you can't really put it that way because um, having new ideas is still very difficult thing for a film, which is why I'm limiting it to a single point, which is why rom-coms are something that you may think like, oh, rom-coms are boring, they're nothing so great. But do you guys remember watching, like, I think it's Grown Ups 2 or something, the one where this guy will like get stuck in like a zip line across the swimming pool, and then he will like crash into the like storehouse and then come out in like a full like he'll be like mummified or something like that, fully wrapped up in bandages, and it was hilarious. And I've not seen that kind of thing in any other film, like being strapped upside down and flying across the swimming pool and then crashing. Sure, it's just funny, it's just comedy, but it's something new. Like we don't see that. It's hilarious, and it was even more hilarious because we didn't know something like that could happen, and something like that happened. And not knowing things sometimes in a film, like new ideas, actually play a very important part in giving us something very special, something very new. And we see shots like this that are like throwbacks to the comics. but we've never seen this done in a film. And it was amazing to see these shots, amazing to see these ideas of like how Batman is running up through the streets as Superman is fighting Zod and everything's getting wrecked. How in the Chronicle it's just a camera film where this psychopath of a guy always likes keeping a camera flying next to him, and he's lost his shit but he's still keeping the camera. Like, why would he do that? Like, it's so dumb kind of thing. But still, it's an idea that we didn't think of, and they're doing it, and it makes this one of the best. What do you call it, like motion camera? I don't know what exactly you call it, but it's the one where you watch the film through like a videotape of by the character, and then yeah, there are certain things that are questionable by characters like Iron Man, like actually deciding to kill Bucky just because he killed his parents, knowing that he was under mind control. These are things that, like you as the fan, you'll think like, isn't Tony supposed to be a genius? So he knows he was under mind control. Like, why does he want to kill him? So these are ideas that don't make sense. Um, but nonetheless, we got a good fight scene. So I mean, they thought that would cover everything up, but no, not for me. It's just sad to see the character like turn up like that. And this idea, the one where in Gladiator, Russell Crowe removes his helmet and says, "I'm Maximus Decimus Meridius," and then tells it to the king in front of the crowd in the Colosseum. These are amazing things that we don't get in any other films. So ideas, man, ideas. And the last point for me, right, the last and most difficult point. Give me a sec. Um, Hang on. Let me just make sure I got this right. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, sorry. Let me just get back to the last point. Okay, so the last point in the film is the enjoyment. How enjoyable is a film? Though is such a subjective thing. Like this is I feel the most subjective point, which is why I left it to the end. Um, you may be someone who enjoys horror films. You may not enjoy action films. Like I enjoy every film, but I do admit that I do not enjoy rom-coms as much. And it's not because I don't like to watch rom-com films, but because the films in general are just bad. Like there are good rom-com films, but they come so rarely. They don't come so often. But most of them are just bad films. They're cheap films. They don't have very good actors, or they're very good actors who, don't really do much acting, and the tone and the music and all is just very off kind of thing. But if they were good films, then yeah, I would appreciate them. So I like films across the board. But some people know they only like comedy, or they only like action, or they only like horror. So that's fine. But how enjoyable are these in general? So when I give this point, I think of how many people can enjoy this film. So Into the Spider-Verse, it's something that anyone could watch. Kids could watch, adults could watch, and everyone could enjoy this film as long as they learn to appreciate it. Spider-Man 2 was also another film that everyone could learn to enjoy if they appreciate it. The Dark Knight is another one of them. Maybe not kids, that I have to admit. The Dark Knight, uh, kids may like to watch this film because of the Batman, but there was some very violent scenes of the Joker, like killing people and all that. Where for the kids, I don't know how much exactly they enjoyed it, because I mean, you don't really see kids buying figurines of this Joker, like this one. You mostly see them buying the one with the purple jacket and the hat, the one acted by what's his name? Man, I forgot him. Such a fantastic actor. But yeah, the earlier Joker. But kids just go because they know the Batman from other films and comics, and they like him. And then there's like the Wolverine. How many people can actually watch this film? Or this X-Men. X-Men film is so enjoyable. Everyone could see it. Um, and then the Avengers, everyone as well could see it. But those maybe who like slower pace, romantic films may not like it. But across the board, it is still an entertaining film. So if those who watch romantic films learn to appreciate this, they could still watch it. If those who like slower, more darker, more serious superhero films, maybe they could appreciate BVS better. So it comes down to entertainment and how much people can enjoy the film. So, like, As I said, right, the MCU sets such high energy, such high paced action sequences that we fail to appreciate the slow, dark, and deep and emotional tone BVS sets. And these are the reason why people, like hated so much on this film, because they didn't really understand it. They failed to appreciate it. And those who appreciate this film, like, they don't like very light-hearted tones of like the Avengers, because they feel that, oh, like these are just a like very it's a very childish and very kiddish film. But you could learn to appreciate both if you see the best of both worlds, which is what I suggest. And I feel that these two were both very entertaining films. And of course, I'm not talking about everything else, right? The music and all that, that's separate rating. But in terms of entertainment, they were both very entertaining. So this is just my general rating. That's my last point. How entertaining the films are. And that's what gives a film a 10 out of 10 for me. And if it doesn't have that, like doesn't have any one of those, I'll just straight up top the point. I don't really believe in like point fives, like the half rating, because it's just not very clean kind of thing. Because if you're really going into decimals, then you might as well give point two, point three, and all that, right? So yeah, there's that. Um, Also, always take an opinion with a pinch of salt. Once again, this is something that I really wanted to convey to you guys. Learn to see what others see, because you could actually learn something that you don't like fully understand. And for me, I didn't really appreciate anime when I was very young. I only liked Samurai X, and then after watching Samurai X, the other animes felt too like childish, too like light, toned and all that. But then when I watched the other animes, like the really funny, or like the eccentric, the very high-paced action, the colorful ones, I learned to appreciate all of them across the board. And sometimes it takes a while. Sometimes it takes a good friend to tell you, hey, no, you should really watch this film. It's actually a good film. Like, try to watch it again, rewatch Age of Ultron, rewatch Paranormal Activity. Um, and the thing about these films, like Paranormal Activity, loses out because it's a film that you cannot watch many times. Because once you know what's going to happen, you're pretty much just going to skip to that, because the rest of the film is very slow. It's more of a build up. So that's why Paranormal Activity does not get such high rating. I think I rated Paranormal like 5 out of 10 back then. This is like way back when I watched it. I can't remember, so I'm just guessing it's a 5 out of 10. And then like Ready Player One, I rated this like a 9 out of 10, because this film is like crazy rewatchable and enjoyable, and it had everything in it. The only reason it didn't get 10 out of 10 is because I felt the emotional take was not there in this film. You don't feel much emotion. The romance in this film was unnecessary, and certain questionable plot lines, but still, overall, fantastic. Into the Spider-Verse, another 9 out of 10 film. You can feel the emotion, you can feel the intensity, you can feel the horror across the board. Fantastic film. Why I didn't give it a perfect score was because, wait, let me check. Why exactly? I need to think. Uh, 9 out of 10. Oh no, I think I rated this a 10 out of 10. Yeah, so this is the score. You're looking at the score for the film right here, Into the Spider-Verse. 10 out of 10. There you go. It's a fantastic movie. Yeah, so learn to appreciate things, and maybe you learn to appreciate more movies, and learn to appreciate low ratings as well, because low ratings, of course, it doesn't matter whether it's mine or someone else's. It could make sense because that's how they saw it, and that's why when you go to a certain website like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb, you don't see everyone giving the same rating. You see a lot of people giving one rating, and then some people giving another rating, and then some people giving another rating. It means people definitely perceive the film in different ways. That alone tells you that opinions are obviously different from one another. So you can learn to appreciate one guy's opinion because it matches yours. But that doesn't mean that you have to put down the other guy whose opinion you disagree with. So yep, it's pretty much it. So I mean, if you're really young and naive and you don't really understand what I'm saying, well, it's okay. I'll give you that. You can take your time to like learn and understand people. And whereas if you're a senior, and you're just being stubborn because you feel that you think everything is right because you're older and you think you know better, well, think again. Maybe you should learn to see what the youngsters see. Maybe you should learn to think a little more maturely or everything. So I always tell myself these things, and I really thank you guys for being a part of it, because it's been a few good reviews, a few good days, um, and I really hope that I get to keep giving you guys these ratings, and I hope you guys can keep learning to appreciate films as I do, and learn to see the good and the bad in the films, and hope that we get better films, because as much as I enjoy superhero films, I want to see any film for that matter that is good. And so if you guys have good films that you want to like tell me to watch as well, you can go ahead. I'll watch it. I mean, it's what I do. I like to spend my time watching movies when I'm not doing anything else. So yeah, um, that's it from me today. Now you guys know how I rate these films. Next time you watch a film, maybe you can look out for these points. If you have your own way of rating films, you can tell me how you do it. I would really like to know. Maybe I would change my perception on how I rate these films because of your idea. It's good to grow, it's good to learn. So always keep exploring, keep trying to understand, keep trying to hear out opinions before you argue with them, because you might actually learn something. It might actually improve you. And yep, so that's about it. That's what today's video is about. Not much of a rant. Sorry for those of you who subscribe for rants. But yeah, here it is. This is probably something that you will not hear from me for a while, and a side of me that you won't often get to see. So yep, that's it from me. Thanks for watching. And don't steal this, alright? Don't steal this. Took me a while on Microsoft Paint to make this. Don't steal it. Alright, I'm watching you. I'll find you. Adios.